From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your question anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. According to a new Mental Floss article, one of the lesser-known roles of the Secret Service is to take the blame for, as the article refers to it, the president's errant cheek squeaks.
Oh, I heard about this.
In a related story, Jim's new nickname is Cheek Squeaks. All right, and now broadcasting from the Turn, that guy's Cheek Squeaks. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
You know,
Dr. Cheek
Squeaks.
Thank you.
God damn it. I found out about that through Twitter from Laura, speaking of Laura.
Yes, I know. We were actually having coffee this morning.
Yeah,
and
that's she saw it.
And she busted out laughing so loud. It was embarrassing for me, actually, because I was kind of like, because everybody started looking over.
Yeah.
And so and then she read it to me, and then I started laughing. And then I immediately, I told her, I'm going to start calling you Cheek Squeaks from now on.
I feel like you should.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, by the way, I'm glad that that's what the Secret Service is willing to do. I feel like that we have a long tradition in this country of the Secret Service keeping the president's dirty secrets. Kennedy was obviously having affairs, and Secret Service was like, it's not our problem, it's not our business.
Given the current administration, I would be like, okay, I'll do that, and then you handle the bullets.
They draw the short straw.
Yeah, I'll take the blame
what
for that.
What I still don't understand about the Secret Service is why they're the ones that deal with counterfeit money.
They're from the Treasury. Isn't that weird?
Yeah,
the Secret Service is actually a department of the Treasury. And do you know during which administration the Secret Service was actually created?
Yeah, it was Lincoln.
It was Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like because next month after his assassination, the bill had already passed and everything.
Yeah.
And that's whenever it was enacted. Before that, they didn't have bodyguards.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Lincoln's assassination happens. Everybody's like, yeah, that's why we were doing that. Because that was a great idea to have bodyguards. Amazing. Can you imagine the President of the United States not having bodyguards?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Have you ever seen the movie Lincoln?
Yeah.
Great movie. In that movie, at one point, people just walk into the White House and share a letter with the president.
Yeah, you could just walk in. And...
Hey, Abe, you got a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just over here fighting a war, but yeah, what's up?
Just doing president stuff.
Yeah, just doing president stuff. Well, my grandpappy received this acreage of land from another president, and I was hoping you could verify.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good job, Secret Service. Unsung heroes of American patriotism. Thank you for taking on the president's flatulence. Mm-hmm. Good people right there. Anyway. So
Cheek Squeaks, what do we got?
Cheek Squeaks. We are taping episode 97. So we are almost there, man. Only 3 more. And it's ironic, of course, because 100 is going to happen somewhere in the holiday season. I don't do math, so I can't figure out when that is. And it's possible that somewhere in there we might have a bank episode because of the holidays and all that stuff. More importantly, I think, is our 2nd anniversary. That's coming up. And so we always celebrate that the same time of year. So I'm getting excited for that. I'm actually going to put out onto social media recommendations for your gift this year. Did you ever receive any of those magazines I had sent to you?
I did not.
Wow. I think they went to your old address.
I think so too.
And I never updated it.
Honestly, no. Well, that was one guess I had, but the primary guess I had is that you didn't actually do it.
I didn't do it.
That seems to be more in your wheelhouse.
Oh, it is. But
hey,
I did it.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Then you just don't do it.
No, I printed you a receipt, I think. I don't know.
No, you printed me a flyer.
Oh, that's what it was.
It
was a picture
you can get that anywhere.
Oh, this is 100% Jim. What you're describing is on brand. But in this case, no, I actually did. And I'm kind of upset that they didn't deliver those things to you. But speaking of things that are on brand for me, another one is procrastination, as we dealt with in October, trying to figure out some strategies for how to actively lose weight and address things that are stubbornly there for us, like an addiction. And so for today's A-Block, I was reading a really cool article that was actually in a great magazine that is kind of sent around among counselors, something we subscribe to a lot of times. It's called Counseling Today. And the article was called Procrastination, an Emotional Struggle. And I really liked it because a lot of times I've had this happen where we get a lot of patients in and they tend to say, I'm here for life coaching. And I'll say, okay, great. That's kind of a different modality. But they'll say, because I'm procrastinating, I'm behind my life goals, I'm not staying on target in life, and I want to focus on that. And I think historically, when I get that kind of case, I'm really tempted to say, okay, let's talk about time management and let's talk about basic organization skills and things like that. But what this article was arguing was saying, a lot of therapists don't get traction with that. And the argument was based on some research that really procrastination is not just merely this logical organizational problem. Procrastination is an emotional reality, and that there's emotional components to this that if you were to address those more successfully, you would actually have a lot more traction when it comes to getting results in procrastination treatment. What do you think?
Well, I guess that makes sense. I'm interested to learn more about this. I never really thought of it as being having an emotional component to it.
Well, like in the article, an example that they use for this is like, why are you not answering your emails? So like your emails are kind of piling up, and it's like, hey, you need to get to this, but it's like, I don't want to. And like if you imagine yourself sitting in front of your computer, like staring at that long list of emails, there is an emotional part of this, which is like discouragement. I don't want to do this. I feel like it's too much, right? Like I don't want to activate my brain to have to solve whatever these things are going to have. I don't want to keep track. If it's business related, sometimes there's a resistance or a reluctance to like dive into it because it's like, there could be a lot of things. Like I don't want to seem like I didn't do my job, or I don't want to, reply to these because what if, like a lot of people have that like fear of like hitting reply. And so like the argument in the article was there's a lot of examples of like going to the gym was another one. They were like, hey, a lot of times we tell ourselves we're going to go to the gym, but then we seem to procrastinate in quotation marks. We think we're procrastinating. But the truth is you're not merely procrastinating because you don't have the time in the day. You do have the time. But procrastination, if you think about it, itself is a behavioral activity. You are procrastinating, which is a state of mind. You are choosing not to do it. You wouldn't call it procrastinating if you had plenty of time to do the thing and you didn't have enough time to do the thing and you just didn't do it. We'd be like, oh, that's legit time management. You don't have the hours to go to the gym. But if you do and you don't, their argument is that is an emotional thing. Right. So like the reason you're not going to the gym might be because you are fearful, right? Maybe you're overweight significantly, and you imagine yourself walking in.
Fear of judgment.
And so that was another highlight in the articles. They were talking about all these examples of times when our procrastination is really an emotional thing.
Right.
And so the article was kind of about, okay, if we take that, for granted, we say, okay, sure, then what might you do to sort of better treat that? And so the article sort of went through different therapists, different techniques for how they tend to treat it. And it was really interesting. And so I thought it would be a really good A block as something that we could bring up, because the way that they wanted to treat that had a lot to do with a theory that you and I have worked with in the past. And Nick, I think you've done maybe more. For some reason, mentally, I think you've used this. Do you ever use RET, R-E-B-T, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy?
It's been a long time, but yeah.
You don't use it a lot, right? Because you tend to go straight for CBT. Because I feel like
typically.
CBT tends to encompass RET.
There's some crossover. There's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, so that's Albert Ellis. Albert Ellis came up with Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. And I think of it as a precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy. But his argument was that we have these irrational beliefs. And so if we can identify what those are, then we can sort of contrast those with reality. And so the article was really cool. So first it talks about, what are sort of the big four core RET beliefs. And so this is something that, you and I can kind of unpack. What are those four core? I'll do the first one. The first one is shoulds and musts. And so this is that mentality where we're like, hey, I should be this way and I'm not, or the only way to do it is this way. So if I don't know how to work out, then I shouldn't even go. Because like I should be able to do this correctly, and if I don't know, then I'm not going to do it. Or, oh no, I didn't reply to those emails correctly, and so like I must do it right. I ought to have done it right. And this is a cognitive distortion we've covered on the show.
Shooting all over yourself.
Shooting all over yourself, exactly. So there were four core irrational beliefs or irrational thoughts that RET basically says show up. The first one is shoulds and musts.
Yep, then awfulizing and catastrophizing.
Big time.
Also making its appearance in a lot of the CBT stuff that we talk about. So being able to see one small thing, but then extrapolating from that large conclusions.
Right.
Basically that it's going to be even worse than it's anticipated, or basically kind of like, in a sense, adding conclusions to something you don't have enough evidence for.
And picking
drawing
the worst
things,
one.
drawing things to its worst possible conclusion, as opposed to all the gray area in between.
Which in procrastinating, it causes us not to undertake a task because we're like, oh, this won't work out anyway. I'll try, I'll fail. And so then we keep punting, like hoping that like a better moment arises where we'll have more complete information. But like we become demotivated, right? Because if you don't believe that something's going to work out, why try in the first place? And Albert Ellis would argue, well, no, that's an irrational belief, right? That's a known one. It's called catastrophizing. The third one of the 4 core was unbearability. And man, I relate to this one. This one is like when you say to yourself, I can't deal with this, it's too much. And so it's like a low stress tolerance delusion where we don't think we can handle a thing. So we think, well, I'm not even going to try because there's no way I could handle that. And that's like, that happens in big ways that are like really obvious, of like not cleaning out your garage or something like that. And it's like you keep putting it off, Why? Because I'm dreading it. Because going in there, it's going to be too much. I'm going to blow up. I have to wait till the conditions are perfect. And it's like, Albert Ellis would say, what you're doing here is you're misunderstanding your own ability to rise to occasions and to rise to challenges. You are part of a species that specializes in adaptation to challenging situations, and your strength will come. And if you just put yourself in situations that are challenging, your strength will arrive to match that. But we don't believe that, right? And so we irrationally believe it's unbearable, and there's no way we could do it.
Yeah, like I can't deal with this right now.
I can't deal with this right now.
When in reality, you can deal with it right now.
You can.
Once you get into it, you will get to that point where you do deal with it.
Yeah, you're allowed to have a figure of speech, and you're allowed to say, hey, listen, I need personal care and self-breaks. But even, it's ironic, Nick, as I think you and I relate to this. As therapists, we are usually the ones trumpeting self-care, and we're usually the ones talking about balance and giving yourself breaks. And we, ironically, are also the ones removing that excuse.
Yep.
In a lot of conversations, people will use that thinking this is the place where they should, and that we would just nod our heads to it. And we often go, but you can withstand a lot more than you're putting on, right? Like you have a lot more strength than you realize, and we're going to challenge that too.
Right.
And that's an irrational belief.
Right. And then fourth is the self-defeating. So I will fail, or I am a failure. So this kind of goes back to a lot of the talks that the conversations we had during Sober October about being able to identify self-defeating thoughts.
Right. Yeah. And that's whenever we do the labeling, we tell ourselves we're not good enough. It's never going to work. I'm just always going to be this way. And so procrastinating shows up in a lot of areas of our lives. And so their argument is procrastination is not merely, oh, you're bad at management of time. It is more likely the case that it's this emotional thing that like Rhett would actively treat. So in the article, it came up with like a list of kind of tactics that generally therapists use to deal with procrastination. So we'll present those to you guys as possible kind of cures. And we'll kind of piggyback off of each other. I think I'll do the first one. So the first one was one I really liked. It was called the vicious circle technique. And so this was one that helps people kind of break out of that mentality where they're catastrophizing or they're labeling themselves or saying it's not going to work out. And so like in this one, you draw a circle and you have to write. So like, let's say the thought you have is, I don't want to respond to these emails because what if I'm bad at this? What if I'm going to just show off that I'm an idiot? What if people are going to be unimpressed with my answers? And so I'm dreading it. And I don't even want to open them. I don't want to show that I've opened them. I don't want to read them. I just want the ignorance is bliss argument or whatever. And so if a person was paralyzed into inaction by that and they're procrastinating, we would have them draw a circle on a piece of paper and we'd have them write down 6 arguments or 6 positive traits that they have that actually contrast that irrational belief. The belief being you're not a good employee. Are there 6 arguments you can make that you are? Oh, well, yeah, I stay late a lot. I take personal initiative on a lot of things. I'm caring. I talk to my coworkers. I carry their burdens a lot. I go the extra mile on a lot of. Okay, so if you can get those 6, then we ask you to the other side. Okay, what are 6 areas that actually argue that you're not good at this? And a lot of us can go, yeah. I cut corners. There's areas where I clock out early or, call in sick. Okay, so then we finish those. But then we look at that and go, can you pick one of those positives that cancels out all the negatives? And like, no, you can't, because you're like, that's not how it works. Like those negatives are still there. You go, great. Can you pick one of those negatives that cancels out all the positives? And they're like, well, no, that's not how it works. You go, excellent. So we're in agreement that you're not either one thing or the other thing. Right? That you're always in a constant state of growth and becoming better at this, right? And that you're not bad at this. So we can cast that irrational belief off, and now we're living in the more complex and more accurate reality that, no, you are competent at this. You're not the best version of this yet. You're not the worst version of this. And if we can dispel that fear, perhaps we can attack that procrastination within you that's holding you back from leaning forward and accomplishing the project.
So this is probably going to be a technique that you're going to do in therapy that isn't going to be, it's for a larger range of things that you procrastinate on.
Yes.
Not necessarily in your example of email, because if that's the case, I got all these emails.
Right.
All right, well, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make this list. I'm gonna
Yeah.
draw this circle,
There's a
and I'm
lot
gonna
of
do
people
all this
that do
stuff.
that too.
Yeah, I clean. That's what I do. When I've got something going like that I'm really stressed about that I know I have to get done.
Yeah.
I'll start cleaning. When I had an office, when I was working at the rehab, I would start to clean my office.
Okay.
And then when I'm at home, I'll clean my office at home.
Are you saying that's how you
something.
Procrastinate?
Yes.
Oh,
that's how
yeah.
I
Because you're like, well, this
procrastinate.
needs to get done too, so let me do this.
Yeah.
And which I actually am not super against, within reason, right? Because I have had one client in history who was exactly that person. And I had to tell them, like, enough therapy. Like, it's time for you to go do the thing. Mm-hmm. And they were like, no, I'm here to figure out why I can't do the thing. And I'm like, no, we've covered this. Like, it's time for you to do it. And they were in what some of us call analysis paralysis, spending too much time trying to understand the thing instead of doing the thing. So I think that's true too. But the circle technique is something that I think it challenges an irrational belief that might be causing you to procrastinate. So if you can identify what is it that I'm scared of, or what is it that's holding me back from doing this task, and kind of take a deep dive into that, if you can arrive at what that belief is, the circle technique, or the vicious circle technique, causes you to see the complexity of it rather than just buying wholesale what that belief is.
Okay. So then the next thing would be reading the positive affirmations aloud, recording yourself, and then playing it back.
Yeah. So like if you do, find things that you can identify about yourself that are true, like those positive things in the circle, sometimes it's really valuable to actually say them out loud to yourself, like verbally. Like one thing that this therapist in the article would do is he would tell, if his client didn't believe those things, like if you'd say, hey, are you a good employee? Yes, I'm a good employee, Jim. But do you really believe it? No. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take those items that we just went over, those positive affirmations that you do really well, and I want you to read them into a microphone, but I want you to read them like you're going for an Oscar. I really want you to try. And if you can convince yourself in that, like you're really trying to win, put that into recording, let that come back to you. Then I want you to hear yourself saying it. And so that's a technique that was in the article, is that can actually contrast with procrastination because it builds up motivation.
Right.
You're starting that. It's basically a tenet of motivational interviewing.
Yeah, and it's, there's a lot of effects, a lot of beneficial psychological effects to doing this. We did this a lot with a lot of assignments like that we would have at the rehab. You know, if somebody had a written assignment, it wasn't just enough to write it down, but actually sharing it aloud.
Yes.
With the group, reading it aloud, because then you're processing it again.
Yes.
In a different part of the brain than you would be if you just wrote it.
And you know what's interesting about positive affirmations, guys, is a lot of us refer to this as faking it until you make it. And so I've had a lot of patients over the years that have taken positive affirmations, taped them to their mirror, and in the morning while they're brushing their teeth, they say those things out loud in their mind, or they just, as they're standing there, they look in the mirror and they say those things, I am intelligent, I am funny, I am well-liked, I have courage, I have overcome a lot in my life, I can overcome a lot more. I am still growing. I am undefeated. I will triumph. And guys, you got to give yourself that, right? Even if you don't believe it, saying it out loud is very valuable because it starts to stir that biochemical mixture in your brain to help break the ice and allow you to start believing it for yourself. So that's actually another technique that can really help with procrastination. Another one the article talked about was naming and taming. And so identifying a feeling word. So I don't go to the gym. Well, why not? Well, it's because I'm procrastinating. No. Dive deeper into that. Because I'm kind of self-conscious, and if I'm trying and I'm not making progress, then I'm self-conscious about it. And if I'm at the gym and I don't feel like I look good, I'm self-conscious about that. And so what we'll do is we'll have you name that problem. I'm self-conscious, name the emotion, and then tame it by doing mindfulness. And so meditation, visualization. Actually close your eyes, imagine yourself, lacing up your tennis shoes, walking into that gym, walking up to a treadmill, getting on top of it, hitting the buttons, and going. And now imagine that people glance at you. What happens next? Well, they generally go back to what they're doing, and some people look at me and some people look at the TVs, and I look at some people and I have my headphones in, and okay. But letting them visualize it tames the thing that they named. So it's a really good technique.
Surfing the urge. I've also heard this riding the wave.
Yes.
Same technique. Essentially sitting with the discomfort. So when the urge to go get a snack when you have that urge to go get a snack and cease work comes, identifying it and sitting with it until it passes.
Right.
So we do this before, when we talk about like riding the wave, we talk about this with a lot of different emotions, that you don't have to act on the emotion.
Right.
When you experience something, you can just sit with it and you ride the wave, essentially meaning that there's going to be high points and low points, and you're feeling uncomfortable at the point you're at now. You just sit with it and wait.
Right.
And it will get to a spot that's more comfortable.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Like, I think back to grad school, and I think about all the times that you're sitting there about to write an essay and how grueling that is to, like, just tape yourself to a chair for, like, 4 hours to just grill this thing out. And, like, when you're first starting, it's a mountain. Like, it's just such an emotional task to do it. And then you'll come up with everything you need. Oh, I need to go get some candy. You know, like, or, oh, I need to go get some coffee. You know, or like, oh, you know what? I didn't make the bed. Let me go make the bed, or whatever it is. And I think that, or I need some chips or something like that. And that's riding the wave, is just sit with it. Let the urge pass.
Yeah.
And then once it dims back down, you get back to work.
Yeah. I did this a lot when I, last month, eliminated the sugar.
Mm.
Right. And there would be times where I was sitting watching a movie and I wanted something. I wanted a snack. I wanted something.
Yeah.
Right? But then just ride the wave. Like, okay.
Ride it out.
So I crave this.
Right.
It's okay. No one's ever died from a craving for sugar.
I will be okay.
I'm going to be all right.
Yes.
It will subside.
Yes.
And just kind of ride it until it goes away.
It's an interesting, I've had one guy compare it to a sigh. And he said, you know, whenever I feel triggered to get something, I sit inside of myself and I hold myself down until my body sighs. And that's what he compared the passing of the craving feeling to. And I think that that's true in procrastination. Like, because a lot of times, a lot of us like cozy up to a task, like we're going to clean the garage or whatever, and then we interrupt ourselves with countless little reasons that we can't do it right now. Kind of like your cleaning thing.
Yep.
It's like, if that's unhelpful, if that's causing you to procrastinate on a task, then allow that urge to pass and then lean back in on the task. So I think that one's a really good one. Speaking of tasks, another thing that came out of the article, I thought this was a really good idea, is setting small little milestones and then giving yourself like a little reward. So I used to do this, like speaking of grad school, speaking about writing, you know, and having to sit down and write these tremendous, 20-page essays. When I would do it, I would always do it at a library and not at home because I didn't trust myself not to be distracted. So I removed all that. And I think I've talked about this on the show, but like my old technique for when, and I talk about this to students all the time, whenever I had to like do big writing assignments, something like that, I wasn't the type of guy that like wrote 1 page a week. Where you didn't do that either, right? You write it all at once.
No, I would write. I would start on stuff pretty early for the most part.
Oh,
You're that guy?
You're a psychopath.
Yeah, jeez. Nobody really does that.
Yeah.
You would do that? You just write like the intro and then just put
writing,
that away?
If I was writing a large paper for something, yeah, typically what I would do is I would just write in bits and pieces, and then I would just get my thoughts out onto a computer.
I would literally sit down at 9 p.m. the night before.
That is the right answer.
And just bust it out.
Just bust it. That's right. All the way till it's due.
It's 9 p.m. I'm going to work on this until 8 a.m.
Yep.
And then take it to class.
Yeah, you turn it in hot. Yeah. Like the paper is still warm.
Right.
Now,
that is the reasonable way to do things.
That is the right way to do things.
Do either of you have ADHD?
Maybe.
Seriously.
I don't know. I was diagnosed as a kid, but I don't know.
Because this is important.
Okay.
All right. Because this is part of why people with ADHD procrastinate.
Okay.
Is because there's an imbalance. Because you've got norepinephrine, which arouses.
Pathologize us. There's 2 of us and 1 of you.
Shut up. It's norepinephrine arouses attention.
Oh, here we go.
And then dopamine sharpens and focuses.
Oh.
So without that, when you have an imbalance of those two, this is why a lot of times people with ADHD appear like they're stress junkies because they have to be in a stressful situation
before they do
to be able to focus onto that thing.
I think that's true because, like, I've heard Paul say before, and I think this is and I'm sure he didn't make it up. It's a great line. I never heard about it until he said it. But no pressure, no diamonds. And he talked about that in the context of improv. That it's whenever your butt's on the line and you're right there staring at a room full of people that all of a sudden brilliance just comes out of you. And I think that that's true with essays. I think that like your best stuff happens when you're like staring down the barrel of a deadline. It's like, this is it. 8 a.m.
That was never me in college or school or anything. It was absolutely. I was like, I'm smart enough to knock it all out in a night.
Yeah,
I'll get to it. I'm just scheduling it for that night.
I'm just scheduling it. So anyway, the theory of how to defeat procrastination in this article's case was setting yourself little milestones. So like what I would do is I'd go to the library that day. I would dress well that day. Like I would dress like I was going into work on a Saturday, and I would sit down and I would like do the whole thing with like my headphones on and have my coffee and just get myself ready. And then I would dive into it. But what I would do is exactly what the article said, which is basically like every time I completed 2 pages or something like that of like one of these gigantic papers, I would stop and I would take a walk around the building and I would get a cup of cold water, and like that was my little reward, is like, okay, now I have a 15-minute break. I will not think about this. I will listen to some podcast or whatever and just do something. Or like, you know, I'd bring like a bag of candy and I'd go outside, have a chocolate and just like breathe or something like that. So little things like that. I think whenever you set a reward system for yourself, like clean the garage, you know, like, okay, don't make it so that once you clean the whole garage, like then you get rewarded. It's like, no. Like if I can get this half done, like then I will take a break and go get lunch. And that's my reward. And then I'll come back afterward, do the second half. Yeah. I think there's value to that, like a reward system or accountability. Like the article also talked about like having your mate change the Netflix password. And like basically you, in order to get that back, you have to finish whatever it is that you were doing. And
then fine. That's fine. I got Hulu.
Now that's a good idea. So what you're saying is whenever I want SJ to do something, I just change all the passwords until she does it.
Until she does that thing.
Good advice, Jim.
That's exactly what he was saying.
That's support right there. She'll thank you. She's going to be overjoyed that she's so productive.
Yeah, she's going to love you.
Yeah. Who's this guy? Who's that idiot that keeps showing up telling you bad ideas? That's what I want to hear. Also, Justin is working on your life coach jingle. I don't know if you saw that.
Good.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's like, hey, how serious are you guys about this? And I was like, extremely. And he was like, okay. He's like, I am now working on...
That doesn't surprise me in
Jacob's
any way.
life coach jingle. Oh, my God. I'm so excited for this. I want it to have the right mixture of disdain and, like, false promises. I want it to be like, hey, call me for whatever you need. Also, I'm not answering the phone. Like, somehow capture both of those emotions at the same time.
Justin, don't send that to Jim. Send that to me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And just let Jacob start playing it like... Anytime he has advice, we're going to, like, smash that button.
I'm on Vistaprint right now for those business
cards. For those business cards, the Jacob cards. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. Anyway, so give yourself, reward or set an accountability, and that's another technique for breaking that procrastination.
Another technique, give yourself permission to feel without judgment. So it's not that I'm a bad mom. Why is that the example you wrote?
That's the one that was in the article.
Jim, you're a bad mom.
I don't think I'm a bad mom.
It's not that I'm a bad mom. It's that I do so much that I haven't gotten to decorating the baby's room.
There it is. So you're allowed to not have succeeded at something. And this one kind of, attacks that shoulds, musts, and self-critical, kind of voice. Give yourself permission to feel things. And if you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to get to this. I don't want to. I feel dread. I feel inadequate to do this. I'm allowed to feel those feelings. But feelings are not facts. The realities are, and that's where you tell yourself the truth. I am good at this. I do know what I'm doing. I can get this done. I've done much more than this. Mm-hmm. Let's go. And then another one is to recall past successes. And Nick and I use this all the time in motivational interviewing and solution-focused brief therapy. Anytime we're trying to get somebody who's feeling low, feeling defeated, feeling like they're not ready for the task to rise to it, one of the things we'll do is we'll survey their background and be like, tell us about a time that you overcame something. Tell us about a time that the challenge was there and that you beat it. Tell us about a time that you won. Tell us about a time that you withstood tremendous odds or whatever. Or just tell us about a time that you and a lot of times you go, never, nothing. And if we have ways to like slip space between those thoughts and help them dig it up. But essentially, if you can recall a past success and reflect on how did you do that, even though that was daunting, how did you do that? That teaches you that you can do whatever's ahead of you as well. And it usually gets you a little bit fired up in the right mindset to get out there and solve the problem.
Right. And the last one, focus on what you will do rather than what you won't do. So this is a good one. This actually kind of falls back into solution-focused brief therapy. When we work with people, we want people to identify things they want in the presence of something preferred.
Yes.
So we want them to identify what they want instead of what they don't want.
Yes.
This is where the instead question becomes very helpful. So when somebody's identifying kind of their preferred future is, well, I don't want this.
Right.
It's like, okay, what do you want instead?
Instead of.
And the reason why that's very powerful and important is because human beings we're creatures of behavior.
Yes.
We're doing things, right? to say we're doing nothing, we're never doing nothing. We're
Right.
always doing something. So we have to be able to create goals and create a vision of what we're going to be actively behaving in.
Yes. And we talked about that in October, too. It's not enough to procrastinate. Like, if you're procrastinating running when you get home, let's say your goal is, I just want to run when I get home. When you get home, you're tired and all that other stuff. So you say, okay, I don't want to go home and just sit on the couch all night. Okay, fine. You're identifying what you don't want to do. But what this thing is asking you to think about is, what would you rather do? What would you do instead of? Well, I guess what I want to do then is to get home and in the first 15 minutes, put on my tennis shoes, pour a bottle of water, and walk outside and start walking. Okay, great. Because now we have a target, right?
Right.
Instead of just, I don't want to, it's what do you do?
Yeah.
It's
As
what
opposed
will
to
you
saying, I'm not going to go home and sit on the couch all night.
Exactly.
Because it's one of those things, too, where, if I tell you, don't imagine a pink elephant, or if you're on a tall ladder, don't look down.
Yeah.
Or go in a room, whatever you do, don't push this button.
Right.
All you're doing is you're occupying your mind with this
Yes.
thing you're not supposed to be doing. So saying, I'm not going to go home and sit on the couch all day.
Exactly.
All your mind is rehearsing
Couch.
is going home, sitting on the couch.
Sitting on the couch. So that's a list of suggestions that came out of this article, thinking of procrastination not as, oh, gee, I'm bad at time management, or, oh, gee, I'm not organized, but thinking about it as, okay, what is like the emotion here? Like doing that downward arrow deep dive into what is the emotional reason that I'm not doing this thing? Why am I resistant to this? Why is this bad? Why is it something I don't want to do? And then seeing, okay, does that fall into one of those irrational belief categories? And if it does, is there maybe a technique that I can run through that kind of helps break that ice? Is there a way to break the log jam and then get in there? And basically, guys, at the end of the day, part of that motivation to break procrastination is the jump into cold water. It's the same way that you jumped into a pool whenever you were a kid. And sometimes, you've just got to make that decision in the air, and you just got to throw yourself. And you know what? If you're in the air, you're going. And so there's only one direction you can go once you've jumped off and you're in the air, and you're just going to finish the project.
Very good. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss how to manage my mom's mental health. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Robert Brownie Jr. Minch. Robert is a character on the television program Sesame Street. He has a green body, no visible nose, and lives in a trash can. His favorite thing is trash, as evidenced by the song, I Love Trash, with a running theme being his collection of seemingly useless items. Although the term grouch aptly describes Robert's misanthropic interactions with the other characters, it also refers to his species.
I did not know that.
Who is he? If you'd like to join Robert Brownie Jr. Grouch and make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about managing mom's mental health.
Hey,
I can't think of that without thinking of the Chappelle Show.
Oh my
Did you ever
gosh,
watch-
when he did the puppets?
Yeah.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
not just that
Oh
part.
no, you're talking about his stand-up.
Oh, it was a stand-up.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a stand-up.
Why are you such a grouch?
Gee, Oscar, you're a grouch.
He's like, I live in an effing trash can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a grouch. That was one of the best. That was Killing Him Softly. Oh God, that was still to this day. I
That
think
was a good one.
It's way up there. It's
Yeah.
up there in the legendary status of great stand-up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have written into the show before, Marriage and Depression episode in the beginning of the year, and I have a question about my mom's mental health. She had a mental breakdown about 15 years ago. I'll try to make this quick / not so quick backstory. Cut some of this out if need be, but my mom met my stepdad when I was 4 years old. She left my biological dad because she was abused and on drugs, and he went to prison for kidnapping us, grand theft, drugs, and probation violation. So after knowing my stepdad about 6 months, we moved from the Central Valley to LA. She stayed with my stepdad, who was not physically abusive to her like my biological dad was for 13 years. He was your typical controlling, manipulative domestic abuser. She went from one really bad relationship to another where she was told she was crazy, no one will ever believe you, you don't even have a real job, and all that kind of messed up stuff. When I was 17 and a half, she finally left him. I received physical and sexual abuse, along with all the other abuses from my stepdad over those 13 years, and I was not making good life decisions in life. So I moved to my aunt's house in Fresno with 3 months left of my senior year and graduated barely. When I left my mom, she had a mental breakdown, and over the next year and a half, she was using drugs with my stepdad, which she won't admit to now, but when I was 18, she told me that she was using meth. And she started to seclude and not eat. She would write tons of notes to me and whoever she was staying with at the time. She went from being a project manager at a huge construction company to being a bag lady and thinking people are coming up to her and saying mean things about her. About 5 years later, I had her placed on a mental health hold, desperately trying to help her, and they said it was a mental breakdown, and since they didn't have a documented history of any type of past mental health issues, they couldn't really diagnose her with anything. Finally, she snapped out of it for the most part about 4 years ago. She has a good job, has a car, and a place to sleep. My husband and I live in Georgia now, and she's in Fresno and comes to visit now and then. I have 3 kids, and she wants to live near us in the next year or so, and I want her to as well. I could really use the help. I have learned boundaries with her, but because of her weird emails or comments, I'm starting to worry her behavior is going to affect my kids. She seems attached to my oldest daughter, who is 9, where it looks like favoritism. I'm worried she's going to create an unhealthy relationship with her that like we had when I was a kid. I was my mom's only support when I was a kid. The biggest thing that almost makes me mad is she sent me an email and it sounded like her old way of thinking when the sickness was the worst and she talked about my daughter a lot. The messages are disconnected half sentences that vaguely point in the same direction but don't make sense. I have no idea what she's talking about. What should I say when she sends me these types of messages? I've gotten 2 in the last week and I haven't gotten any of these in quite a while, and I'm worried that she's flaring back up again. She thinks people are listening to our conversations. I don't want my daughter to have to deal with this, but I also don't want to take their only grandparent away from them and lose my mom again. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Pterodactyl Cindy.
Awesome.
Thank you for being a pterodactyl, Cindy.
Yeah. So, right away, my immediate reaction to this is wondering, is she clean or is she still using something?
Right.
Because it's very, very difficult to separate mental health symptoms from psychosis that you may experience from substance use.
Yeah.
So, without that information, it's kind of hard to tell.
It
I
is.
mean, I guess that's probably where I would start. And I don't know how exactly from Georgia you would be able to accurately
And it's a big
get that
commitment
information.
to have mom move all the way there.
That's
coast to coast. Because once she's there, in a lot of ways, she's your problem
right.
now.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, you want that era of time, whenever the grandparent is healthy and able to spend time with the kids. And, I think that I get that. But goodness, I mean, believing that you're being watched is a psychotic symptom, right? It's a paranoid delusion. Mm-hmm. And actually, Nick, in the original letter, she did send a copy of mom's messages. And I summarized them in that first line of that paragraph by saying they're vague, they're disconnected, they're coherent.
So you saw them.
I did see them, and I didn't prefer to put them out there
Sure.
just because A, it was impossible to read them out loud without it being disorienting, and B, I just didn't feel like that was appropriate. But yeah, they were incoherent, and they were the type of thing where they're like half sentences, like you think the person followed everything you said, and then you just finish all of a sudden with, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, I don't, because you didn't even say anything on that first half, or like asking random questions like, loneliness perhaps? And you're like, what? What is that question referring to? Like, that was not your last sentence. So my hypothesis is the same as yours. If this person has a history of substance abuse to the point where they've become in their past homeless, and it's a long-term abuse of something, it's not a smoking gun to me that they're using meth, though that tends to be common to relapse back to your drug of choice. But, especially with like legalized marijuana and stuff like that, we're seeing a lot of this in the West Coast. With like, as weed has become legalized in some of the states in the West, people are going to use it, which is fine recreationally, but if they have a history of substance abuse or mental illness, it tends to flare up problems. And so that would be my hypothesis immediately. And if that's the case, you've got to be really thoughtful about bringing this person all the way out to be with your kids.
I think so too. And to me, it just kind of reminds me of a situation that occurred. I've said before on the show that I was a foster parent for a while. Mm-hmm. And one of the boys was 17 years old, and mother was using drugs pretty heavily. And he was expecting it was for his birthday. He was expecting a gift card or something. His mom had said, yes, I sent it, and wasn't showing up. Wasn't showing up. It's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks go by, to the point where now he's thinking that I took it.
Oh, no.
Right? I must have taken it from him.
What did you buy with it?
Oh, tons of shit. No, I didn't have it. But
it never came in.
Yeah, but he just, well, no, it did finally come in.
Oh.
And from that moment, I have the highest level of respect for the U.S. Postal Service.
Wow.
Because how they were able to deliver that letter is beyond me. They must have some kind of magical powers.
Because it was poorly written, like the address?
The address was wrong.
Oh, wow.
The street was half right.
Oh, my gosh.
The house number was wrong. The zip code didn't match the city.
Oh, wow.
It was a mess.
And they figured it out.
And they must have had Robert Langdon from the from the Da Vinci Code to analyze this thing, because I cannot understand. But somehow 6 weeks later, it actually got there, and it's because of her drug use. Like she must have been just stoned out of her mind when she put that together.
Yeah. Okay. So like in this case, I think that story, kind of teaches us about whenever we're seeing things like discombobulated writing, we're seeing things like messages that are incoherent, and the messages that you shared with us, writer, kind of match on that. And so to us, I think it's one of two explanations. It's either unmedicated, unchecked mental illness that might be showing up, or it could be substance abuse. Now, I want to leave room for a third option, which is I've got people in my extended family that are like this, where their messages don't make sense, and like I don't understand what they're saying, and they're not mentally ill, and they're not like abusing hard drugs, like they might just be occasionally using like painkillers or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're not like intoxicated on anything, and they're just I don't know, like they're just not
and it could,
fluid thinkers.
Or a learning disability, too.
Right.
But with a learning disability, that's not something that's going to come and go.
Exactly. And that's the same point. Like the family members that I have that are like that are just not fluid thinkers.
It's always like that.
It's always like that. I've got 10 years of text that I don't know what the hell they mean.
Yeah.
And so like if in this case, writer, Cindy, if that's, not what pairs up with this writer, your mother, then our best guess is something acutely has happened. And, I think that going back to what you said earlier, Cindy, about the boundaries, it's not wrong for before she comes down to live with you, there be some kind of check-in where you say, Mom, I know that we're getting close to making this decision. It's the kind of thing that we might be thinking about in this next calendar year. Before we do that, I would like to fly out there and visit with you and spend some time with you with the girls and do some just to get some like extra hands-on kind of contact where you can kind of observe her close and in person.
I agree.
I think it's good to get some of those samples before you really go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there has to be a lot of visits back and forth.
Yeah.
For maybe a year.
And if she's open to it, maybe even asking her, "Are you willing to take a drug test? Yeah. This is important to me, and I think might be something I want."
Yeah, you can do it through the lens of like, got to put my kids first.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the other thing.
That's a fine lens to put it through because you do.
Who's going to judge you for that?
Yeah, yeah. And that was the other thing too that I kind of wanted to touch on, because growing up in that environment, I feel like there was probably a lot of role reversal.
Yeah.
Where
for Cindy,
where you've got Cindy playing the role of the caretaker, for Mom, and my concern then too is that if that's never fully addressed, Mom's still in that spot, and is that what's going to happen with the 9-year-old, where we're going to have role reversal
to you
there.
Again, Cindy, and that's something you have to respect. And you talked about how you've done some good work in boundaries, and I'll take you at your word. But one of the things that Nick's absolutely right, great observation, is if you bring this woman to your home now, isn't she just going to become your fourth child? And, maybe you want that to some extent. Maybe she is a really good grandma. And listen, don't let us talk you out of it. I mean, but we're just trying to enhance your awareness, give you more things to think about so that you're not walking in blind. you're allowed to just have a grandparent come and spend time with your kids. But another thing I would challenge you to do, because I've seen this happen in other family members' lives, I think it's a very important observation. Sometimes we have this mentality that once this family member comes down to live in our neighborhood or in our home state or whatever, that they're going to be to our family what they are when they visit. Like they're going to be really attentive, always there, helping. But in reality, they're going to start their own life. Sure. And so like, I think that this is just something you have to accept. Like, speaking of my own life, my father moved here to Las Vegas a few years back. And in the beginning, sure, he's at your house every day and always around the kids and, but then he makes friends and he gets a job and like he starts his own life. And then, you see that person occasionally, but they're not like this extra pair of hands that you expected, that you fantasized about. Like, oh, now we have 3 parents to raise the kids. Like, no, that's not how it works. Don't convince yourself of that. And if you can square with that, then that should be a factor into all this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say get some experience with some vacations, some long-term vacations on both ends. You going there and her coming here. Yep. And I think your best judge is going to be, just that face-to-face interaction.
Absolutely.
See where that goes first.
Absolutely. Great writing in, Cindy. Always glad that you do. And thank you so much for being a supporter of the show.
Definitely.
I think that's our...
Is that it?
That's a pterodactyl.
All right.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's the best we can do.
That's how they do it in Louisiana.
Didn't vote on that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss fat therapy. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Kayla Lansbury. Nicknamed Patty, Kayla was an Australian aviator and founding leader of the Women's Air Training Corps, a volunteer organization that provided support to the Royal Australian Air Force during World War II. She later helped establish the Women's Auxiliary Australian Air Force, the first and largest women's wartime service in the country, which grew to more than 18,000 members by 1944. If you know who Kayla Lansbury is, which I doubt that many of you do, but maybe...
I was getting prepared for Snuffleupagus to be the next one.
I should have.
And yeah, you totally threw a curveball here.
Not?
You can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about fat therapy.
Hey guys, I'm a Scoop, and are you? I'll be damned. And though I'm unable to listen to Pod Therapy regularly, another Scoop suggests that I contact you about this. I want to find a therapist who will specifically be able to help me with food-based anxiety and other problems related to food. Here's the problem.
Fat therapy.
Fat therapy.
I heard you saying fact therapy.
Fat, F-A-T.
There we go.
What'd you think it was?
Fact, F-A-C-T.
Oh, that should be a thing. Both are a thing.
Yeah. Fine.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know what that is.
Here's the problem. I'm fat, and plenty of medical professionals can't seem to see past that. I worry especially about bringing up that I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. I worry that I won't be heard. I anticipate being told that I just have to try harder, being given the information I already have, and being sent home with a waste of a copay. Finding a therapist is hard enough in the first place. Do you guys have any recommendations? Thanks, the Brain Scoop. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I get that fear where people are afraid that they already anticipate what's going to happen. And so what this person's saying is, I'm already overweight, and every time I visit with people, that's the number one thing they can see. They repeat the same stuff to me, which I get it. If you're overweight, you just hear the same things over and over again of, oh, have you tried walking? Or you should try eating vegetables. And it's like, that's fine. But like, if that information hasn't changed me yet and hasn't been useful, giving me an essay on nutrition is not going to catalyze change. So he's saying, I'm willing to see a therapist for this. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think most therapists hopefully are going to understand this, because here's kind of this thing that I'm witnessing, and I think hopefully eventually we're going to get to a spot where we did with drug and alcohol. And what I mean by that is there's kind of these two competing schools of thought, where one group is saying, this is, addressing this is fat shaming, and that it's, this is
right.
Be comfortable with who you are. Just if that's the size you are, be comfortable
with that.
Don't
bully, don't
right?
be abusive.
Yeah. And then the other side is saying, no, you shouldn't. That's unhealthy. It's
Right.
if you're concerned about your health, we should be focusing on this. We
Right.
should be dropping weight.
It's valid, and we're not hurting.
Right.
We're not trying
and
to hurt.
I think both sides have a solid argument. I think the thing that people are missing is the same thing that people were missing when we talked about addiction, which is this idea that it's just that simple of just like, well, geez, stop using drugs, you idiot.
Yeah, why don't you just stop?
Yeah, stop
I
drinking alcohol,
can't.
you moron. You know?
Yeah.
And it is where we used to be with addiction was this was all behavior based.
Right.
And then now all of the science is coming out, and as we learn more about the brain and the way that the brain functions, we
Yes.
realize this is a disorder.
Yes.
It's not behavior based. It's
Right.
not something that we just stop. So I think eventually we're going to get to the same spot with this food debate
Right.
that we did with alcohol and drug. And I'm glad to hear he's identifying as having had an eating disorder, because honestly, I
Right.
think that's probably what this is.
Yes.
So finding a therapist that's going to understand that
Yeah.
and maybe not talk about it. Maybe it would be a good idea to find somebody that has some experience in addictions treatment.
I think so.
Not to say that they're completely parallel and that they mash up perfectly.
But it's
I don't think
helpful.
they do, but I think if you find somebody that's got that background, they can take some of that same understanding, applying that to food, and they're not going to say something just, as simple as just like, well,
work it out.
have you tried eating
Running.
less?
Yeah. No, I think
mean,
that's a
it's-
really good observation. And one thing, Brain Scoop, that I want to speak to you is I want you to understand that with therapists, one of the things I think most people are pleasantly surprised to discover with us is you feel heard. And that's the thing. Your very first encounter with a therapist is a minimum of 50 minutes. Usually I keep it at 50, but a lot of therapists want it at like 90 minutes when they first meet you.
Yeah.
And they are not in a hurry. They're going to get some survey data. They need some basic information. There's some checklisty stuff. But then they kind of get to know you. And if you tell them what you told us in this essay or this letter, if you tell them, listen, I'm discouraged. Use that word. I am discouraged, but I want to change. I want to be okay. But I am discouraged because people see only my body size. And other medical professionals get so distracted with that they don't get to know the human being who's underneath this, who's trying to figure out my life and trying to feel better. And if you can communicate that to the therapist, most of our profession is going to hear that and understand what you're really saying. And I think that's what most folks, Nick, have told us over time, is that they're pleasantly surprised when they encounter us, because a lot of times we'll see patients that have only ever seen a psychiatrist. And they're like, wow, the last guy I saw, he only took 10 minutes and he couldn't wait to get me out of there. And we always follow up with, was that a psychiatrist? And they go like, oh, I don't know. It was, like you are.
He gave
and
me
you're
a
like,
prescription.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not
That's a
that. I
psychiatrist.
don't give you meds. I get to know you, and we do this the organic way, And so, Brain Scoop, I just want you to be encouraged that if you're able to communicate this to your therapist, I think you're going to find that almost any therapist in that chair is going to receive what you're saying and meet you where you're at.
Yeah, and you can always, call, get information on the therapist first, and
You can.
ask if they have any experience with eating disorders, and if they don't, could they make a referral? I mean, I think
That's
if
fair.
you find somebody that's got maybe experience with an eating disorder, or maybe experience with addictions treatment,
Yes.
something like that, I think that's a good first step.
I think it is too. Yeah, I really like that advice of kind of leaning toward the addiction side. I mean, I don't think a lot of addictions people would feel qualified because they'd say, well, this is about eating. This doesn't have to do with substance abuse. But I think one thing that I learned through Sober October is how closely these two things are aligned. And they may not realize it yet until we write our book. I think that once we publish our combined works.
Which we're going to get to after we finish the book study.
One of those.
yeah.
One of the book clubs that is
The
still
book clubs,
unfinished.
yeah.
We never even finished Mark Manson.
No, we didn't.
Jeez.
We've done 2, and we're over 2. So, yeah.
We've really not done 2. We've done half and half.
Counts as 1.
That counts as 1. Anyway, Brain Scoop, keep your head up, man, and thank you that you're listening and giving us a try. I'm glad that you have a friend that cares enough about you to encourage you to write in. And, don't be a stranger, man. You don't have to listen to the show to write into the show. Of course, you are going to have to listen to the show to get your advice. That's how we get you. But feel free to write in again, and I'm really glad that you did.
Yeah, thanks for writing in.
So we've come to the end of the show of episode 97. Not a whole lot of announcements, except that Like we said at the top of the show, there's going to be some holiday interruptions, so you guys might hear a bank episode around there somewhere. 100th episode's coming. You can send all of your gifts to Jacob. He will make sure that we get those.
Will he?
He did once before.
Just like that gift card.
He did it. And then our 2nd year anniversary is coming up in January, and our 100th episode is going to come up probably sometime in December, since this one's numbered 97. But we've got some Patreons to thank, don't we, Nick?
Yeah, we have a new THERAPAL. Thank you to Tristan N.
Yeah, Tristan's last name is about 10 syllables, and so we're abbreviating. Unless you want to take that shot, I'm not. So Tristan N. And we also want to also welcome again. So we have that new category of $10 and up, which are pterodactyls, and we have somebody that's already trying to push the buck on this one. So Crazy Banana Scoop already bumped up to 15, and I think that's just to tempt us to say, what now? I'm a pterodactyl. I'm accomplishing each step of the ladder. There's a gap between pterodactyl and theraproducer. So nice try, Crazy Banana. But for right now, we're just going to re-announce you as a pterodactyl. And thank you for your support.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight, mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr., Mint, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex officio board member Ellie O'Dare.
If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy our spontaneous side projects like Book Club and Pod Therapy Fantasy Football League and Jim's Journal, you can go to patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangent.
I'm Jim Jobin.
You're Cheek Squeak.
I'm Cheek Squeak.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Cheek Squeak, attorney at law.
Cheeks and squeaks.
Cheeks and squeaks. Have you ever seen